Lord Jesus Christ according to Matthew.
Glory to thee, O Lord.
In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem, Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Jerusalem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to thee, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. I, like I'm sure many of you do, especially in this season, love a good manger scene. There's a reason that we love them, right? And we should. There's something wonderfully hopeful about that little community that we gather in those figures. Those people that gathered around the manger to worship this baby, God born among us at Christmas. Earlier this week, I was walking outside on our campus by the labyrinth, and this little kid and his dad walked by, and I waved to them and said hi, but the little kid was not interested in me at all. He gasped as they walked closer and said, "Dad, can you go look at the baby Jesus?" There's just something about those manger scenes that capture our imaginations of them. We have these different artistic renderings of these scenes. It's been a powerful source of imagination and joy for many, many years. So hold on to that love of manger scenes, and know that I love manger scenes too. I'm not about to mess with them, but I'm about to mess with them actually. The familiar tidiness of the manger scene with a whole bunch of biblical context and complexity. So sorry, you can tell me afterward if it was worth it. It's okay if you don't like it. At Christmas, specifically, we do something that we're not really supposed to do in the Bible. We do that specifically with the manger scene and with Christmas pageants. We kind of pop little pieces out of different parts of the Bible and we sort of smush them together in the manger. We're taking stories out of context and sort of pushing them together to make the story sort of more harmonious and smooth. And you're not really supposed to do that with the Bible because the Bible has these different stories. We have 4 very different Gospels, 4 very different stories about the life of Jesus that were written by 4 different people, who we call Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And these authors were speaking to different communities that had different points that they were trying to make. It's not that we can't of these stories together. It's not that they don't all contain really important truth. It's not that they are opposed to each other, but they're different stories. It's a little messier that way. It's more complicated, has diversity in its unity. But that's what we've got, not one perfect unified narrative. So the point of this, or the Christmas season, is that most of our Christmas stories that we have about Jesus come from the Gospel according to Luke. Luke was the Gospel that we read most of last year. So Luke tells us about Mary and her visit from the angel. Tells us about the long journey to Bethlehem on the donkey. Tells us about Mary and Joseph needing to be counted by the emperor, and that's why they traveled. About Jesus being born in this humble stable with the animals. We hear about the shepherds in the Gospel of Luke, hearing about the birth of Jesus from the angels. And Luke seems to pick these particular anecdotes because they come at the beginning of the story and he wants to introduce us to some themes. Jesus really wants us to know, or Luke really wants us to know some specific things about Jesus. That Jesus appears on the margins. Jesus appears in humble places that are often excluded, like a manger. So if you think about it, the greatness of the angels of heaven coming to these dirty shepherds, the greatness of God being born into a barn, that's classic Luke right there. That's what Luke wants us to know about Jesus. And that theme is being introduced right at the beginning. So the other part of our manger, the Magi, the wise men, we usually pop them right into the manger with all these characters from Luke, but they actually aren't from the Gospel of Luke. This story appears in the Gospel of Matthew only. And Matthew is telling us a similar story about Jesus, the same person, but he's wanting to introduce some very different themes right at the beginning. It's not counter to Luke's message, but it's got some different points of emphasis. So this story that we heard this morning was from Matthew 2. But Matthew, right at the beginning, if you read Matthew all the way through, it actually starts with this really odd genealogy for Jesus. You've already heard this genealogy if you've started from the beginning of Matthew. So usually when we tell our own genealogies, we tell about our own ancestors, we highlight the really cool ones, right? The ones that were interesting, who led honorable lives, the heroes whose stories we might remember. And so the genealogy of Jesus that Matthew writes out, that he starts with some of those biblical heroes, Abraham and King David and a bunch of other kings of Israel and Judah. But the genealogy also goes out of its way to remind us that those heroes were flawed, that they made mistakes. And it also goes out of its way to include a bunch of other ancestors who were weird and scandalous people, who were poor, who were just questionable. And the other thing is, several of those characters are questionable, poor, weird, unethical, and they're also people through whom Jesus did, through whom God did some very important work. So it would be kind of like if I was telling you my genealogy about my ancestors, and in the midst of a bunch of really impressive people, I was really going to impress you. I also threw in oh, and by the way, my great-great-grandmother was a prostitute, and somebody else had an incestuous relationship, and somebody else had a very illegal immigration.
He hides a little there,
and I just
doesn't he?
really wanted you to know that.
I'll be right back.
And then I went on to remind you that those scandalous people were the ones that I really felt like were amazing examples of a life of faith. They were the ones through whom God had done the greatest work in the world. It's an interesting way to start the gospel. And then after this weird genealogy, we learn about Joseph and how he was about to divorce Mary for another scandal, getting pregnant out of wedlock. Until an angel came to him in a dream and said that Mary was actually telling the truth, that this child had come from God. And then Matthew's story, and this story that we read this morning, it gets even weirder. The regional king, Herod, gets a visit from these foreign stargazers, and they come to give him the rattling news that a new king of the Jews has been born, and they're wondering where to find him. Come across many, many miles to do this. And it terrifies Herod, because Herod is one of those rulers who's exploiting and suppressing his people at the command of the emperor. So he's always worried about being overthrown. This news terrifies all of Jerusalem, we say, because anyone who's comfortable with the status quo, these interesting visitors are threatening this balance of power, the status quo. We know the rest of the story. The Magi, the wise people, they recognize the truth of this baby Jesus' power, and they go to worship him, and they don't report back to Herod. And maybe you know the awful and weird story that comes next. That Herod orders the massacre of all the babies in the area because he's so afraid of this threat to his power that has been announced. Jesus escapes, again, because of a dream that Joseph believes. Because Mary and Joseph take him and flee to another country until it's safe enough to come home. So here we add to the genealogy one more couple touched by scandal. Mary and Joseph doing scandalous, illegal things in order to contradict the orders of the powerful. They listen to God. Through them, great things come to be. They're right in line with that strange genealogy. So I give you all this weird context to say that this is a bonkers story. Matthew's whole introduction to this gospel seems pretty foolish when you think about it. If your goal in writing a gospel is to tell about Jesus, to establish to the world that Jesus, who, by the way, by the time Matthew wrote it down, has died in a humiliating criminal way. If Matthew wanted to establish that Jesus was actually the Son of God, one who is offering salvation not just to his people, but to all people, this is a really dumb way to start this story. I think Matthew would want to start out with all the awesome, heroic, kingly, respectable people from whom Jesus was descended. You'd think Matthew would want to establish that Jesus' parents made some kind of sense as people to give birth to this King of the Jews, the Savior of the world. Matthew, you'd think, would want to establish that Jesus, even from birth, was powerful, commanding, clearly better somehow than the rest of us. But that doesn't seem to be what Matthew wants to tell us in this gospel. These introductory stories are classic Matthew. He's telling us who he is and what his point is in writing. We're going to return to these themes as we read through Matthew this year in our lectionary. Now, Matthew chooses to begin his story of Jesus by reminding us that his ancestors were prostitutes, immigrants, unethical leaders. Matthew wants to remind us that the actual ruler, the actual person in power over Israel when Jesus was born, wanted him dead from the beginning. That his parents, with this illegitimate, scandalous child of unknown origin in tow, ran away from their country in terror. The first people who recognized him for who he was were a bunch of random stargazers from across the world who believed that the stars were sending the messages. If you believe Matthew, if you bring Matthew to the manger, we see that the manger scene is actually full of scandal. And all of those ancestors, that genealogy, when these weird stories come to Jesus in the manger, see that it's just an odd community. scandalous community, one that's not respectable, one that's certainly not quaint and sweet. As we bring Matthew and his story to the manger, it reminds us that this is how God has always worked. You might say that this story is classic God, as we come to know God already through the Hebrew Scriptures. Matthew reminds us that God has always worked through unusual, messed up, scandalous people. God has always rattled the people who are invested in the status quo. God has always brought a bunch of unexpected weirdos together to worship, build up God's kingdom, search for truth and wisdom in our midst. I think the good news for this Sunday is that we, my friends, are part of that long line of scandalous, messy weirdos. We are part of that. We don't have to be anything else. When we forget that, when we forget that that's who we are, that that's who we come from, when we start to believe that we're people of respectability, of status, of needing to be perfect, of needing for everything to make sense and be nice and tied up with a bow, we're going to miss looking up to the heavens and believing the message of a rogue star. We are a people of wonder, of mystery, of believing that God could and will show up even in the most unexpected of places and people, even in us. Today, whoever among us wants to take a star off the wall and believe it has a message from God for us, it's a weird thing to do, and we're going to do it, and it's going to be great. It's a beautiful thing to do. I think that the Magi would be proud of us. I had the chance this New Year's Day to gather with a group of wise women who came to our labyrinth prayer walk to pray the new year. I was honestly kind of a little bit grumpy about it because it was the first thing I had to do after a week of vacation, and I'm 9 months pregnant, so I'm just kind of grumpy a lot. And most of the time, I want to get up and do anything, but I wanted to be there to welcome anybody who came to walk and pray. So I had a chance in the gathering darkness of the evening to just sit and observe this prayer walk. I watched the sky change from the sunset of blue and pink into darkness, and I saw the stars become visible. I thought about how easy it is to make our lives seem artificially bright and shiny. And I thought about how good it is sometimes just to acknowledge and soak in the darkness. That you can see things in the darkness that you can't see in the light. I looked up at Whitney's window in the bell tower and saw its message of justice illuminated from within. I looked at the wise woman slowly walking and praying for our world in its darkness and in its light. And I knew that even in the messiness and fear and threats to the status quo that frighten us now, that there's also good and wonder and God showing up in the midst of us. Every day, every moment. In that moment, in the small gathering of wise ones who came to do such a strange and wonderful thing, to follow a maze in a circle at dusk, and believe that it would lead to wisdom, truth, and more goodness in our world. And I was so glad that I was there to see it, to be a part of it, to soak in that darkness and light with that strange little band of people who gathered that time. And as I was going home, a song came to me, a song from the verses that we heard from Isaiah today, about God's light showing up in the darkness. I learned this song 10 epiphanies ago, during one of the messiest and most unrespectable periods of my life. I was underemployed, driving this broken down car around Los Angeles, and it broke down so many times, and I caused so many traffic jams and made people honk and curse at me, and I was sad and grumpy a lot and probably hard to be around. My work was meaningless, and it wasn't a great time in my life. I was not respectable. I was not all tied up with a shiny bow. We were part of this very strange church, definitely a band of weirdos. And each Sunday after Epiphany that year, we'd sing this song together. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. And sing it over and over again. And as that song sank in week after week, I came to believe it just a little bit more each time. That Matthew was right, that in the midst of our messed upness, in the midst of the world's darkness, in the midst of what is absolutely scandalous and messily human and complicated and hard, God shows up. We don't do anything to earn God showing up for us. It's not our goodness or perfection or shiny respectability. It's just that God wants to be with us, because God loves us. That's what makes us arise and shine. Stand in the light of God's dawning light. God's love that comes to us, whoever we are, wherever we are. So, if you're willing, join me in this little song. Join with the figures in our manger scene and all of the people of God throughout time, standing in the messiness, in the darkness, in the dawning light of God's love. It's weird, but it's good. I don't think any of us could ask for a better band of messy, beautiful, beloved weirdos to sing with together than us this morning. I'll sing it again, and join me. We'll do it a couple times. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. I invite you to stand in body and spirit, turning to page 326. It is Tuesday. The name of faith.